it to YouTube.
Okay.
So then we go to remote desktop. Back into here. See the live video. Full screen that. And then we go to here. We switch this to stream 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. I think we're good to go. I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Mount Pleasant City Commission this Monday, June 22nd, 2020 at 7:12 p.m. And I will ask everyone to look, first I should, we'll rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America
and to the
republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
visible,
with liberty
and
and justice for all.
Clerk, has the roll been taken?
It has. All are present tonight except for Commissioner Lalone, who is absent.
Okay. First on our agenda is a reading of the Emancipation Proclamation in recognition of Juneteenth. And Juneteenth is a holiday celebrated by 48 states in the United States, celebrating the final freeing of slaves in 1865, almost 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. There were slaves still in the state of Texas, and they were finally freed after a member of the Union Army finally got down there and read the Emancipation Proclamation. And so, in honor of that day, on June 19th, I will read the Emancipation Proclamation as read by 16th President Abraham Lincoln. Whereas, on the 22nd day of September, in the year of our Lord 1862, a proclamation was issued by the President of the United States, containing, among other things, the following: that on the first day of January, in the year of our Lord 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state, the people whereof shall then be in rebellion against the United States, shall be then, thenceforward, and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act or acts to repress such persons or any of them in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom. That the executive will, on the first day of January aforesaid, by proclamation, designate the states and parts of states, if any, in which the people thereof, respectively, shall then be in rebellion against the United States, and the fact that any state or the people thereof shall on that day be, in good faith, represented in the Congress of the United States by members chosen thereto at elections wherein a majority of the qualified voters of such state shall have participated, shall, in the absence of strong countervailing testimony, be deemed conclusive evidence that such state and the people thereof are not then in rebellion against the United States. Now therefore, I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, by virtue of the power in me vested as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy of the United States in time of actual armed rebellion against the authority and government of the United States, and is a fit and necessary war measure for suppressing said rebellion, due on this day of January in the year of our Lord 1863, and in accordance with my purpose to do so publicly proclaimed for the full period of 100 days from the day first above mentioned, order and designate as the states and parts of states wherein the people thereof respectively are this day in rebellion against the United States, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, in which accepted parts are for the present left precisely as if this proclamation were not issued. And by the virtue of the power, and for the purpose aforesaid, I do order and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are and henceforward shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedoms of said persons. And I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free, to abstain from all violence, unless in necessary self-defense, and I recommend to them that, in all cases when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. And I further declare and make known that such persons of suitable condition will be received into the armed services of the United States to garrison forts, positions, stations, and other places, and to man vessels of all sorts in said service. And upon this act, sincerely to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution, upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done at the city of Washington, this day of January, in the year of our Lord, 1863, and the independence of the United States of America, the 87th, by the President Abraham Lincoln. The reading of the Emancipation Proclamation is important to recognize Juneteenth and the freedom of all people in our country, and also in light of the Black Lives Movement and the movement in our country and around the world against violence and brutality against people who do not see that they're being treated fairly in society. So I hope that over the next year that this city commission will work with our local groups, such as the NAACP chapter at CMU, the Office of Diversity and Inclusivity, and others, maybe the diversity group, to formalize a recognition and a proclamation that we'll do in recognition of Juneteenth every year. So thank you for listening, and we'll move on to additions and deletions of the agenda. Seeing no hands up, we will move on to public input on agenda items. And we do have a couple of members of the public. And if you wish to be recognized, there is the raise hand function in Zoom. Not seeing any raised hands, and I would ask Manager Ridley, have there been any comments emailed to the commission on agenda items tonight?
We do not have any comments on agenda items, Mayor.
Great. With that, I will close the public input section on agenda items, and I will ask the manager to go over a receipt of petitions and communications.
For this evening, Commission, we have the following items for petitions and communications. We have your regular report on pending items, the February minutes of the Downtown Development Authority, the annual report, financial report of all of the component unit financial statements, which are required to be provided to you by June 30th. And as Mary Ann's memo indicated, these are still subject to audit, but we had to meet the June 30th date to get them to you. So if they should happen to change as a result of our audit, we will be sure to get you revised statements, but we don't anticipate that to be the case. And then we have two correspondence that were received that were in your packet. One was from Martha Smith of 1001 East Gaylord, and she indicated her opposition to the liquor license that is the subject of your public hearing this evening. And then we had a correspondence from Thomas Rudert, who expressed, he did not provide an address for us, but he expressed his concerns with the elimination of the directional signals on our street signs. And I did receive a couple questions on that based on the article that was in the paper. So I thought you might want to know a little bit of history about that issue. And the short version of it is that we were required to replace all of our street signs over a period of time to meet new standards by the federal and state government that deal with the reflectivity of the signs, and it also dictates the font size and the upper lower cases that must be used on those signs. So we, since at least 2014, and we believe it's even been longer than that, as we've been replacing those signs to meet that standard, we have not been putting signs up that have the prefix on them, such as north, south, east, or west. So we've been doing that since at least 2014, and we estimate that probably between half and 3/4 of the street signs in the city have been replaced in that way. And this is the first time that any public comments have been received from us about concerns regarding not having those prefixes. The original complaint that came to us about the street sign had to do with the fact that we had put a street sign up that said University Street instead of University Avenue. And as we researched that, we learned that we were incorrect in that, and we are in the process of replacing those so they do say University Avenue. But at this point in time, we don't have any plans to start adding the directional indicators back to the signs since we are so far along in that process. But if you have other questions about that, please be sure to let me know and we can get you additional information on it. And that is all of our petitions and communications for this evening.
Thank you, Nancy. I see Commissioner Tolis has his hand up.
Can I get a clarification on this on number 5 and also number 8, the public hearing on the CMU liquor license? I was called by Representative Houck yesterday and wanted to know if this was on the agenda, and I didn't understand, or he didn't understand, why it's on the agenda. This is a state entity granting the license to a state entity. It's already done by legislation. We were already bypassed. This just doesn't make any sense to me. You know, what we're reviewing and what we're having a public hearing for, it's a done deal. I don't understand this. Maybe somebody can explain it to me.
Mayor, I was going to cover that before we open the public hearing, but I can do it now if you prefer.
Why don't we wait for the public hearing, just because we're going to get there, and I think we can address Commissioner Tolis's concerns then, just to keep us to the agenda. So is there any items on the consent calendar that need to be removed before we? Seeing no hands, I will have Commissioner, or Manager Ridley go through our consent calendar?
Yes, the items we have on the consent calendar this evening include the approval of the minutes of your regular meeting of June 8th. And then we have 3 bids for you tonight for consideration. The first one has to do with the preventative maintenance contract for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems at the Borden building and at the Public Safety building. And based on the bids that we recently received, we're recommending the low qualified bidder of ATI Group for a contract to cover the remaining 5 months of this year and all of 2021 and all of 2022. And this would lock in the prices for not only the maintenance contract for both of those buildings, but also the per hour rate we pay for both regular repairs and emergency repairs as outlined in the bids. And adequate funds exist in the existing departmental budgets to cover this contract. The second bid is for the replacement of the exterior facade insulation at the Public Safety building. This project was outlined in the capital improvement plan, and the bids we received ended up coming in larger than what we had originally estimated. So we're recommending we accept the bid for 2 of the 3 sections of replacement for this year, which are the areas near occupied office spaces and are the most problematic when leaks do occur. So we're recommending award of the bid of these 2 sections, which would require an amendment of $14,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund, and there's adequate funds to cover that amount. The remaining areas, which are around the larger towers, we would look at rebidding next year, and we would look at assuming that the 2021 budget could allocate adequate funds for that project. So all we're recommending for this year is award of the $54,000 contract to Cusack Masonry and the appropriate budget amendment. And then the third bid is for the removal and hauling for biosolids at the wastewater treatment plant. And this is a contract that we bid every 3 years. And again, we're recommending the qualified low bidder of NutriGrow Environmental. And this contract will cover the appropriate loading and hauling, testing, and any digester cleaning that is needed over those 3 years. And because the volume can vary by year, we're recommending, like we typically do, an award of a not to exceed contract over the 3 years of the contract for $208,300. And again, there's adequate funds in the wastewater treatment plant to cover this typical contract. The next item on the consent calendar is to authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with the Michigan Department of Transportation for a $30,000 grant for our municipal airport. And the funding for this grant comes through the CARES Act, and our airport is eligible for it because of the coronavirus and the fact that we continue to have some operational expenses incurred during the stay-home orders, but there was a decrease in air traffic and therefore our revenues. So this would reimburse us for some of our operational expenses that we had during that time period. And lastly, we're recommending the approval of payrolls and warrants.
Thank you, Manager Ridley. Recognize Commissioner Gillis.
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Commissioner Alsager.
I second the motion.
Any discussion on approving the consent calendar as presented? Commissioner Toles.
I have one question for Nancy on just repair on the city building. We're doing the FS with that Trumco material that I've used before. And it says repairing. Are they going to completely recoat after they do the repair spots?
I would like to defer your question, Commissioner Toles, to either Brian Kench, who's on the phone, or Paul Loria, who's available, because I think they know more of the details about that. Can either of you answer that question, please? Brian, I see you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Are you? Paul, do you happen to know?
Yeah, they're going to remove the old EFIs and totally recoat it with new.
So we're going to repair the spot and then recoat the whole wall,
Correct.
correct? Okay, that's what I just wanted to double check, because usually just repairing a crack doesn't solve the problem. You gotta recoat the whole area using that one whole product.
Yes, this is a total kind of stripping of the old material and the application of the new one.
Okay, thank you.
You bet, sir.
Commissioner Gillis, I see your hand up, or is that just, okay. All right, seeing no other hands up, we can move for a roll call vote on approving the consent calendar as presented. And I will hand it over to City Clerk.
All right. Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone is absent. Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Tolis,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay. Right, next on our agenda is the public hearing. And it's the public hearing on a new Class C license for the John G. Kolhavi Event Center at Central Michigan University. And before we get into the public hearing, Nancy, did you want to give an overview?
Yes, as Commissioner Tolis indicated, there was a public act, it was at Public Act 39 that was passed earlier this year, which created an opportunity for certain college and university venues to obtain liquor licenses through the state of Michigan. And the Kolhavi Event Center on CMU's campus was one of the locations identified in that approved law. When CMU began to put their information together for the local, or for the Liquor Control Commission to officially obtain the license allowed under that law, they were told by the Liquor Control Commission that they needed to obtain the resolution from the local unit of government, with the local unit of government either support or disapproval of such a license. So when Mr. Seeley first sent that to me, I too was surprised that the LCC was asking for that. So we did some checking into it, both through our attorney, first of all, and he indicated that he didn't think that local approval would be necessary. But as we spoke to the Liquor Control Commission, they again indicated that they wanted the local resolution from the city of Mount Pleasant in order to process the application. So we moved forward based on the information we received from the Liquor Control Commission and advertised the public hearing, asked CMU to provide us the information that we would typically receive for a liquor license, and took it through our standard review process, although we fully recognize that many parts of our local review process do not apply due to the nature of this license and due to the somewhat independent nature of CMU in many respects. But we were taking it through the process because the Liquor Control Commission indicated that they wanted that resolution on file. In all cases, the Liquor Control Commission always retains final authority for issuing liquor licenses, but they typically do take input from the local governing board. So what we are recommending tonight is based on what the Liquor Control Commission told us, is to go ahead and hold the public hearing to obtain public input, and then to consider the standard resolution, recognizing that it's just input into the process, but they ultimately have the final decision. I too spoke with Representative Houck on Friday to talk about why this was on the agenda, and he seemed to understand how we got to where we were with it. And so I'm recommending tonight that you move forward with the public hearing and consider the resolution so that we don't hold this up at the Liquor Control Commission standpoint, since they were asking for that resolution. And Mr. Seeley from CMU is on the call if you have any specific questions regarding CMU's use of the license or any questions about the process. So I would recommend you hold the public hearing and then consider the resolution. Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Manager Ridley. And I will now open up the public hearing on the Class C license for John G. Kolhavi Event Center. And if you are here to talk about that, you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom.
Testing.
Hi, Brian.
Oh, sorry.
All right. It does not look like we have any public here in the meeting that wants to talk about the liquor license. So I will close the public hearing and recognize Commissioner Toles.
Again, I still don't understand this, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. The horse has already left the gate. The state legislature gave this to CMU. So what are we going to review and have a public hearing on? I won't be supporting this because we were bypassed, number one. Number two, I don't really not in favor of the liquor license for CMU, number one. It's going to be a nightmare just trying to enforce it. How are you going to enforce it when they're serving beverages there? Somebody of age buys 3 or 4 beers, brings them back, and gives them to other people. This is supposed to be a family atmosphere there, number one. And number two, I don't know what the state's doing now, the liquor control. If it's a private entity business, then it goes in front of the city commissioners before it even goes to the liquor license. We were totally bypassed. So what is this, a show now or what? What the liquor control wants? The state took it over and granted that direct to CMU. Liquor control didn't even hardly have a say in it. I don't understand this. I really don't. And I won't be supporting it.
I'm going to look for a motion on the resolution so that we can properly go into discussion. Commissioner Ronan?
I move to support the resolution so we can make the discussion.
Okay. Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
I second that.
Okay. And now we can go into discussion. Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, my question is, with this approval that has already pretty much been done, but will this be beer and liquor that's being sold at the Kolhavi Center Arena?
Yes, I believe that license covers beer and spirits and mixed spirit drinks.
That was in Director Loria's memo that it covers beer, wine, mixed spirit drinks, and spirits for consumption on premises.
And so, to confirm Commissioner Toles's concerns, is it going to be prevented that underage students won't be drinking? What kind of measures, does anyone have any idea what kind of measures are control measures so that underage students won't be drinking?
We have Mr. Seeley from CMU who's here, and if he would like to comment.
Our current intentions are not to serve to the general public, but to just use it in the VIP areas. The upper club lounge, which is the suite space there. Currently, to have any alcohol in there, it has to be paid for by the host, whether that's one of the 5 varsity teams in there or whoever is hosting that event. We're not allowed to charge for that in any way, shape, or form. The lower club lounge is a VIP area for team supporters. We also plan on using it for different types of events that are in there. We host the Capital Campaign event was in there. We host a new venture competition that has a bar. Athletics holds their Hall of Fame, which has a cash bar. They would like to have a cash bar. The intent right now is not for this to be general public sales. And if it is, we have certified bar staff that manages that operation for us. So we follow the TIP certification that most bars in town are required to follow.
Thank you.
TAMS training.
We do tips, but
And I'm actually tip certified because I work in a restaurant, and tip certified is all about recognizing IDs, making sure people are of age and that they're not using a fake ID, and also about signs of overconsumption and people who are maybe potentially trying to buy drinks for people other than themselves. And so it's pretty extensive. There's a lot of good information there, and people who are certified have to take a test to make sure that they're competent. Commissioner Alsager?
Like Commissioner Tolis, I attend quite a few events at Central, and I would have had some of those same concerns that he expressed. But with the way that Mr. Seeley explained it, I'm much more comfortable supporting the motion.
Commissioner Tolis, I see your hand up. I don't know if that's old or.
No, that's a new one, Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Seeley. You stated that there's no general sales to the public. Was this brought up at the legislature when CMU presented this?
I was not at the legislature when the presentation occurred. That was between Representative Houck and Toby Roth, our Vice President for Governmental Relations, had the conversations.
Okay, and I don't believe this was stated in there from what I've heard from talking to Representative.
I'm at the operational level. I oversee operations of our bar operations on campus, our campus dining, catering. So I work from an operational level. I don't know what was discussed with.
I understand that, but this makes a big difference. You're telling me no general sales to the public. So there's going to be up in the upper suite and the lower suite, which already serve alcohol there, but they can't charge for it. Now you're telling me, well, we're not going to have sales to the general public. Well, would you have to get a license for that? You already had a license there.
It's not just athletic events that we host in there. We host a number of different events in there that we would like to have the license so that we can sell versus having a social host, which requires a campus department to purchase the alcohol and give it away.
Understand it. So you're basically going to sell to the general public then?
We don't consider our VIP areas to be general public. You have to have access to get in there.
But you're telling me you're going to have other events there, correct?
Correct. But they're not open public events. All the events that are there typically require registration in advance.
I would say, we need to table this until we can get the actual document and look at it and get some more information on this, because what he's representing now is not what I heard on this. And it makes a big difference,
I can only share what I know, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gillis?
I don't know if you'll have the answer for this either, Mr. Seeley, but was there any discussion for sales in the future to include the general public, including our student population?
My understanding that has been discussed. We're not in the process of trying to get that approved. We would have to get the Board of Trustees on campus to approve that for us, and we've not had any conversations related to that with the board.
Because my concerns are the college students, and most college students are under the age of 21 if they started right out of high school. So that would be a large percentage of the students.
For the most part,
go ahead.
If it were to go to public to sales and students were involved, they can go to Hunters across the parking lot and get it for a third of the price of what we'll charge to have it in a venue.
Sure.
So it's some of it comes into economics.
Yeah, but also a lot of participants at football stadiums or football like it during the show, during the game. So,
yeah. Our football stadium is licensed differently than is what the event center would be.
Okay. So this would be at the stadium, the basketball stadium,
That is correct.
and this does not include the football stadium.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
The legislation is very clear. It's only for the Colhaby Event Center.
Okay.
As a nonprofit, we have 12 one-day licenses that we can use, and that's what we use for our football games.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to give some comment. I'm going to be supporting this resolution. I think this was an idea that was constructed, I think, by the legislature a few years ago, and a lot of other universities in the state of Michigan were awarded a liquor license, and a lot of them intend to sort of use it in a limited fashion as CMU is presented here, and through some processes, CMU was sort of left out of that at the beginning, and I know that the administration has worked with the legislature to get that back, and I trust CMU to be responsible and to be good stewards. So I will be supporting this resolution. No other hands up. I think we can go to a vote on the resolution as presented. Commissioner Toles, I see your hand up. Did you want to?
I got one more comment, Mayor.
Sure.
This is why I'm a little upset it didn't come to us before it went to the legislature. And let me give the rest of the commissioners a little background. CMU went to the Beverage Association, got involved in this, and they weren't too happy about it. And that's why CMU circumvented them and went to the legislature to get this done, which they've got it awarded now. And being Mr. Seeley saying there's no general public sales, they were awarded this license to sell beverages by the glass, okay? By the glass. And again, we'll be supporting it, and I think this is just a boondoggle. You know, we should have came to the city commission first to review this and ask questions about all this stuff. And now we just ran a round game around it, and now we got to put a red stamp on it and send it to the Liquor Control Commission.
My understanding is that Representative Hauk reached out and reinitiated this in the state legislature. It was not CMU that went back to get this request after it was initially denied.
Well, it was initially denied in the first round, and then CMU put pressure on other business people in town here
To be fair, sir.
Fact. I know this for a fact. And you tell me there's not going to be any general sales? Doesn't make any sense. You just got a license to sell liquor by the glass. It doesn't say who you can sell to and who you can't sell it to. It doesn't make any sense, sir.
I don't know why you have distrust in what I'm saying, sir.
Well, you just told me you didn't know if it was discussed in there because you weren't at the discussion, sir.
Yeah, I understand that.
Is that correct or is that not correct?
I was not at the discussion, but
Mr. Toles, would you let Mr. Seeley speak?
I did let him speak, Mayor. And he just told me there's no general sales to the public. Then he told me he wasn't at the discussion. I know a bit about this because I know people on the Beverage Association and everything else, and I talked to the representative about this. But let's move on. Everybody's made their mind up. Let's call the question and get the vote on. tired of wasting any more time on this.
Okay. Mr. Seeley, did you have any comments before we go to a vote?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Not at this time.
All right. Thank you for being with us today. Clerk, we'll start with the roll call vote.
Okay. Commissioner Toles,
No.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone is absent. Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Allsager,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
That motion passes.
Okay, next on our agenda is item number 10, which is to consider acceptance of $30,000 from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, or otherwise known as MISHDA, for a neighborhood enhancement grant and authorize the mayor to execute the necessary documents. I know we have Assistant Fire Chief Doug Lobsinger here with us, who's been working very hard on that grant. But I will first, Major Ridley, did you have any comments?
Yes, I would just remind the commission that in November, you authorized the mayor to sign a letter of support for this grant. But what we're asking you for tonight is to formally accept the award of the grant, which we were awarded for $30,000 for this program. And it can be used for eligible expenses in owner-occupied residences on the west side of the city, assuming that certain conditions are met. So we're recommending tonight that you authorize the mayor to sign the actual grant agreement. And then at your next meeting, we will provide additional details for you about the parameters of the program and the eligibility of the program and how the application process will work before we start rolling that out. But we have a deadline to accept the grant by tomorrow, so we're asking you to go ahead and authorize that this evening, and then we will follow up with the additional details about the implementation of it at your next meeting.
Commissioner Ronan? George, you're muted.
I wasn't here in November, so I apologize for the lack of knowledge again. But I assume we'll have some input on criteria or something regarding how people can apply for the grant, or that it's equal or equitable, so that all residents have a.
Yeah, that's why we want to talk to you about it at the next meeting. There are some limitations we have based on the grant requirements,
Sure.
But those areas where we have flexibility, we will let you know and make sure you're comfortable with those areas of flexibility.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher.
I move that we authorize the mayor to sign the appropriate MISHDA documents for the acceptance of the $30,000 grant.
Thank you for that motion. And the next hand up is Commissioner Toles.
I will support that.
Okay. And we can go into discussion. I see Commissioner Ronan's hand up. No? Commissioner Toles?
No, I'm done. I just didn't.
All right. I just wanted to recognize Assistant Fire Chief Doug Lobsinger. I know he's worked really hard on this program. It's required him to do a lot of trainings and extra work that will benefit our community. And I just had one question that for staff. After we execute this this grant and dole out the $30,000, is it possible for us to apply for the grant again to repeat this process and further help our neighborhoods?
Absolutely. This is something that we can do once or twice a year. I know we can do it once a year. There's not a lot of cities that are repeating, but I do know there's 2 or 3 that are in this round. There's like 48 different cities that are involved in this grant.
Seeing no other hands up for questions or comments, we can move to a vote. Chairman?
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone is absent. Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Toles,
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher,
Yes.
Mayor Joseph.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Great. Next on our agenda is item number 12, which is to consider site access agreement with Altel Corporation. And I will let Manager Ridley give us some overview before we head into the discussion.
Yes, we were contacted by representatives of Altel wanting to construct a cell tower on city-owned land on Broomfield Road. And this is a location where we have an active water well. And we had some concerns about the potential ability of being able to construct a cell tower at that location, because as you can appreciate, we would want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with our water well, nor with the radio feeds that we have among our water system to be able to monitor our water levels. So Altel has agreed to hire firms to complete the analysis needed to determine if it's a viable location to construct such a cell tower without having a negative impact on our water system. So the city attorney has drafted the agreement that was provided in your packet, whereby Altel would be responsible for the costs of any evaluation that is needed, and we would be able then to evaluate that it would not have a negative impact. And assuming it doesn't, then we could then consider an access agreement that would consider the construction of a cell tower, and we would be paid by Altel for that, similar to other cell towers we have on city property. But the first step is for the evaluation to occur to know if it's okay to construct one in that location. So we're recommending you authorize the mayor to sign the site access agreement that was provided by the city attorney for this item.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes, to make a motion to enter into an agreement with Altel.
Okay. And Commissioner Alsager?
I will second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Commissioner Alsager?
It sounds like our good city workers have done their due diligence and come up with a good plan, and it is something that we should support.
Yeah, I would echo those statements. I think staff is being cautious and trying to protect our infrastructure and the things that we've already have in place, especially when it comes to our water infrastructure. Those are really important for our city. And I look forward to seeing the results of this work and going forward and making decisions based off the independent analysis. So, seeing no other hands up, we can move to a roll call vote.
Commissioner Ronan,
Yes.
Commissioner Toles,
Yes.
Commissioner Alsager,
Yes.
Commissioner Gillis,
Yes.
Commissioner Lalone is gone. Commissioner Perschbacher, I didn't, did Nathan come through?
Yes.
Okay, just didn't hear it the first time, thank you. And Mayor Joseph,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. Next on our agenda is announcements on city-related issues and new business. And I do see Paul Loria's hand up, but I don't. So I'll recognize Paul.
Thanks, Mayor. I may have misspoke on that e-fees. I took recoat to mean completely redo the exterior, removing the old. And I just want to clarify and let Brian Kent speak so that the group doesn't think that I misled them. So I apologize for that. I don't know what Robert's rules say about going back. I'll let you guys figure that out. And when you're ready, you can recognize Mr. Kench. Sorry, sir.
I'll recognize Brian. I suppose we can.
Unfortunately, his audio still isn't working, it doesn't look like.
Yeah.
So Paul, are you worried that they may have made their decision based on inaccurate information?
Yes, that's correct, ma'am. What Brian said to me was that the contractor will only remove damaged insulation that is part of the EFI system, retape joints, and reseal the entire system. Not recoat, but reseal the entire system versus taking out all of the, I call it stucco, but.
But Commissioner Tolis, that's what you were concerned about. You wanted to make sure it was resealed after the repair was done. Is that correct?
That's correct, but manager, really, I'm not understanding what they're talking about recoat. Once you take EFIS and you take out the bad part and you tape it, sand it out, and finish it, then you roll the whole surface with EFIS coating that is paint mixed with a coating, and you recoat the whole area, which seals all your repairs that have been done.
Then I think that, or I know that's exactly what's being done, because Brian just told me, yes, that is correct. So I guess this was a exercise that didn't need to happen, but I wanted it to be clear.
So then you were correct then. Yes.
Correct. I think I just explained it wrong, like they were bringing it down to the studs, and that ain't the case. So,
No, usually when they do one of those repairs, they'll do just the repair and then won't recoat the whole wall. You know, they'll just seal that one area because the paint blends in on it.
Yeah, no, they're resealing it for water tightness.
Okay,
So
that's all I wanted to check.
I apologize for interrupting the flow of the meeting. Thank you.
Oh gosh, no.
No, that's fine, Director Loria, Paul. It's good information. I'm glad you spoke up. I will recognize Major Ridley for announcements on city-related business.
Thank you, Mayor. I was just going to give you the ongoing update on where we are with re-engaging and reopening based on the COVID-19 status. As you know, we continue to increase staffing levels based on the lifting of some of the governor's governor's executive orders and some of the restrictions that are being lifted. And as of today, the City Hall building and the Public Safety Records lobby transitioned back to allowing walk-in public traffic. So we are now seeing face-to-face customers as of today. We're still encouraging people to consider doing remote work or remote activity to the extent that they can, just because it's still safer based on the environment we're in. But we do have face-to-face staff activity going on. We just are requiring individuals who enter the building to wear a mask when they enter the building. Farmers Market has had 3 successful weeks on Thursdays now, and we had our first Saturday Farmers Market this past weekend. They continue to make adjustments to the Farmers Market, but the numbers continue to grow each week. And part of that is because we have more products that are available each week. But I also think people are understanding the process a bit more, and we're seeing more and more customers show up. You also approved the expedited process for the review of the outdoor space to allow businesses to use some of their outdoor spaces because of the occupancy limits. And we continue to see more businesses utilizing that expanded capability. And as you know, we closed down Broadway Street between University and Main, and we put out picnic tables, again, to provide expanded options for the downtown businesses, primarily for takeout. And it also gives the retailers an opportunity to use the expanded space if they desire. And although we've tentatively put that in place until September 30th, we are evaluating it every 2 weeks to make sure it's meeting the intended goals, and that we're hearing from both the businesses in that area as well as the public. And we will evaluate additional streets if they're requested, and we feel that is warranted if it's successful. Initially, when we did it, we did receive some concerns about the increasing level of trash in the trash cans, and we believe we've addressed that concern by having more frequent trash pickup. And also on Friday, we implemented a temporary ADA compliant space on the corner of Main and Broadway due to the loss of the accessible space that we had at Broadway and University. So we encourage people to share their comments with us, both good and bad, about their evaluation of it as we continue to evaluate that. From an outdoor facility standpoint, we opened the skate park and the dog park about 10 days ago. And today the spray park was opened, and we also opened some of our park's restrooms, and the ball fields are now available for sponsored programs. And by July 1st, we expect we'll have additional restrooms open, and the pavilions will become more available, but on a reduced occupancy. So more and more of our services are being re-engaged with the public, and we are glad to have the opportunity to do that. But we continue to evaluate everything we do to make sure that we are keeping not only employees safe, but also the public who are using our facilities safe to the extent that we can. I've said it every meeting, but it's so important, I'm going to say it again, that I continue to encourage our community to have patience and compassion. We still are finding that people's patience levels and stress levels are high due to everything they've had to deal with during this coronavirus issue, and it's still ongoing. So I continue to encourage both the staff and everyone we come in contact with to recognize that each person's story is different, and any grace and compassion that we can have with each other will serve all of us well in the community. And then the last piece I had, which is not coronavirus related, but thought the timing was appropriate, is with the 4th of July coming up for fireworks. If you don't mind, Mayor, I was going to ask Director Lauria to remind the public what dates are allowable for individuals to set off fireworks within the city, because that is limited by state law. So Paul, could you remind us what dates are available for fireworks?
Yes, city residents may use consumer fireworks starting at 11 a.m. on Monday, June 29th, through until 11:45 p.m. On each of these days through July 4th, Saturday, July 4th, ending at 11:45 p.m. on that day. So from June 29th through July 4th, starting at 11 a.m. every day until 11:45 p.m.
And Mayor, that concludes my report, unless anybody has any questions for us.
Thank you, Manager Ridley and Director Lauria. I'm going to recognize Jeremy Clerk, or Jeremy Howard, our clerk. I see his hand up, and I want to give staff time to talk before we get to the commission.
Sure, just real quick, it was asked last meeting about city commission packets, so I just wanted to give that information. This information's on our website too, so everybody can find it there as well. But there are 2 seats available for the city commission for 3-year terms. The terms go from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2023. That would be Commissioner William Joseph and Commissioner Kristen Malone's terms, which are expiring on December 31st, 2020. City commission packets are available currently at the city clerk's office. You can pick those up, and they can actually be turned in starting today, Monday, June 22nd, and you can turn those in through 4 p.m. on Tuesday, July 21st.
Thank you, Jeremy. before we get into announcements, I had a few things I wanted to say. June is Pride Month for our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer brothers, sisters, and non-binary community members. And I just wanted to share some resources that especially serve that community and the general community. There is the Gay, Lesbian, Bisexual, and Transgender National Hotline, which is a national hotline, and it serves people of those communities. And you can reach them at area code 888-843-4564 or at glbthotline.org. There is the Trans Lifeline. Trans Lifeline is a peer support crisis hotline. It is the only service in the country in which all operators are transgender, and the area code is 877-565-8860 or translifeline.org. There is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a national network of local crisis centers that provides free and confidential emotional support to people in suicidal crisis or emotional distress 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And you can reach them at 1-800-273-8255 or at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. And then there's the Crisis Text Line. Crisis Text Line is free 24/7 support for those in crisis. Text from anywhere in the United States to text with a trained crisis counselor. You text START or START to 741-741. And some of our local mental health resources, the Bay Aranac Behavioral Health 24-hour crisis line is 800-327-4693. The Community Mental Health for Central Michigan 24-hour crisis hotline, 1-800-317-0708. The Saginaw County Community Health Mental Health 24-hour crisis hotline, 1-800-233-0022. Family and Children's Services of Mid-Michigan is 989-631-5390. And the MPA group, which is 989-667-9661. Probably many of you noticed that a lot of those numbers are for people with who are in a time of crisis or mental health. And unfortunately, suicide is very pervasive in the LGBTQ community as a result of discrimination and a lack of social acceptance in some communities. And so it's just good to be aware of those resources if you're in need or if you know someone who may utilize those resources. In other announcements, I just wanted to encourage the community to be safe. We're seeing a lot of news headlines about the state where we are having a low number of COVID-19 cases. And I want to thank our state governor for the leadership in that area, but I think we have to be cognizant of the threat that a second wave may come. And you're seeing other parts of the country who are having their record-breaking numbers. And so we are far from out of this pandemic, and to remain to be safe, wear a mask, and practice social distancing. And I'd also like to remind the community to fill out your census. And then I will hand this over to Commissioner Gillis.
Yes, quick question for fireworks that are being set off before the designated dates. I have multiple, I don't know if it's multiple people or one person or a family that keeps setting them off over here on the west side. Do we just call dispatch to report that?
That's correct. If you want to call 773-1000, which is the non-emergency number, and just just so people know, the violation of our ordinance is a $1,000 or $500 fine. So it's a pretty severe penalty.
Great. I would like to encourage officers that find people that are illegally setting off fireworks to please make an impact and find them. I also have ran into now two I shouldn't say community members, I should say two park users that decided our Mill Pond Park was a great place to have a campfire. So I was able to contact someone to, I spoke to them and they told me they knew that, and an officer had already told them that that was okay, just put the fire out when they left. So unfortunately, after my walk, I had to make a call to the dispatch. So I encourage all community members to contact dispatch, non-emergency dispatch 773-1000 when you see any of these activities that could put all of us at risk, and also our park. If one of those fireworks or those campfires got out of control, we might not have a park anymore. Along with people that are doing the fireworks in their backyard, if one were to not totally ignite and part of it came down in the neighbor's yard, old shed, their house, they could start those places on fire. So I would like to have that limitation be enforced, and anyone that's setting up fires to be fined because of the risk, fire risk they're putting us all in. But thank you for that information. I would also like to speak to the property committee. That would be Commissioner Lalone, who's not here this evening, Commissioner Ronan, and Commissioner Paulseger. I was on the property committee 2 or 3 years. Not this year. I'm only in one committee this year as a 5-year veteran. Out of our 13 committees, I've been appointed to one. Property committee wasn't that, but Joel Oliveri is asking for an extension on his 2 parcels, building the 2 parcels on Batson. I would urge the city commissioners that are on that committee that we have already extended it for 2 years. I think he is trying to strong arm us into doing his whatever changes he wants to happen in the zoning ordinance. And so if he is finding difficulty building under our current zoning ordinance, which people are building houses, single family homes under our current zoning ordinance, I would encourage the property committee to allow that opportunity to expire. We would then return the parcels to the city for a $6,000 each payment to Joe Oliveri, which I think that's exactly what he bought them for, and then put them on the market with a local realtor. We have a local realtor that comes to city commissions when it's in chambers. I'm sure Ms. Stressman would do what she could to sell those at a reasonable price and make a profit for the city. To continuously say you can't just build for this zoning ordinance until it's changed. Well, we've given him 2 years to build under the zoning ordinance. If he doesn't think that's possible, let's recoup those 2 parcels at $6,000 and let's sell it as a profit, because I'm sure there will be plenty of takers for those parcels at $6,000 each. So please reach out to me if you would like to speak to me about anything more concerning the property committee. I know your chair, Commissioner Paulseger. So just wanted to give you some background that this is happening. This has been long enough, and the wait has been long enough, and I don't feel the commission should have to be strong-armed into doing something different because he's not willing to build under those circumstances. So please consider that, and thank you. I also received a letter from a community member that is concerned about people making it to the voting polls, asking us if ICTC could allow free rides during that day. I also would love to see that happen, not only for the primary, but the November election. I think that would be a great thing for ICTC to do for our community, or if any way that we could help them in resources so that could happen. Want to remind the community members that we have passed in Michigan a no reason absentee ballot. law so that anyone can now vote by mail. So please, if you find yourself having difficulty making it to polls on a certain day, there is any day that you can, before that time, that you can get an absentee ballot and mail it in. It is completely safe and valid to mail in ballots. People have been doing it for years. So please take advantage of that the voters approved. Thank you, Commissioner Jeremy, for giving that information about the packets. Please, anyone in the community that may be interested in running for City Commission, reminder, this is a nonpartisan board. We represent all our community members. And please step up and try to fill the void. We need team members that represent all the community members and have Mount Pleasant at the best of heart in representation. I also would like to say that Target is, I've heard Target is upping their minimum wage or their wage to $15 an hour. I have been a proponent for a living minimum wage for years. I'm glad that some corporate entity has stepped up into that forum that we've been trying to establish, that people cannot live off a $9 an hour job, a 40-hour week. So I commend Target for stepping that up and taking that place. I would hope other retailers and corporations would do the same, so that we would allow people that are working 40 hours to own homes, be able to afford a car, and the basic essential needs for them and their family if they choose to raise a family. I also want to tie this into our commission's thought about using or establishing low-income housing. I don't think the need for low-income housing would be as great if there was a affordable minimum wage, a minimum wage that is livable. So I ask you to examine that. What is the real cause of the need for low-income housing? Is it because corporate wealth will not spread it out to others, which we were promised with the big tax breaks that came about for the most wealthy of our Americans? And it is still not dribbled down to a lot of us people that are still struggling to survive. So I hope that we can find some way to serve those low-income people without continuing to put low-income housing in our community and giving them a living wage to be proud of. I also have a very much a concern with something we discussed last work session, and I'm doing it during the regular meeting because I know a lot of people don't stay for our work session because it's just so interesting. So, but there was some discussion about eliminating no on-street parking. And I want to say to the community members, I had many reservations when I voted on the zoning ordinance. And I can say today, if I was voting on our zoning ordinance today, I would vote no. I was reassured several times by Jacob Kane about the major concern I had about parking requirements. I served on the Planning Commission for 3 years, and before that, I studied the old zoning ordinance for 2 years, trying to combat a apartment complex that got pushed into a single-family neighborhood of 12 units. So I knew 2,900 square foot per unit. That developer even included parcels that were under the river, so in square footage, so he could build more apartments on that site. My experience in developers, they will use every inch of a parcel to put another person in there, another tenant, another 100 square foot, so they can have another unit. They eliminate green space, and now that we've eliminated parking requirements for apartments or multiplex housing units, I was reassured by Jacob Kane, our planner, that I brought this situation up, this very instance, I don't know how many times, about parking requirements. And he said, we don't have to worry about that because we have no on-street parking during the months of the winter. So there's no way someone could build an apartment and say, you guys park on the street because they can't park there 4 to 5 months out of the year. He convinced me to vote for the zoning ordinance because that was one of my major concerns. Not even 2 years later, we have not even hit the 2-year mark, and we're already discussing that we're now eliminating the prohibition of on-street parking. And what I want community members to realize, you live in a single family home. You happen to live in a CD4 zoning. Somebody buys the parcel next to you, rips down the house, might be an empty parcel, decides to build an apartment complex. We have no parking requirements in our zoning ordinance right now. Developer wants to make the most use of the parcel. He makes the footprint as big as he can, the building footprint as big as he can on the parcel, so he can build as many units as he can. Guess where the tenants are parking? They're parking in front of your house, on-street parking. Now, as a single-family homeowner, I want my front of my house, my street, not that it's mine, but I want it for my guests. Or I want it for one of my kids because we have 4 cars and they all can't fit in our driveway. But guess what? We have to pull them in the driveway and all pack them in the winter so that we all have to shuffle when we pull out. My concerns and my ask to other commissioners, imagine if you had a single family house and a CD4, a developer bought the property next to you, he put 10 tenants in there and they're all parking in front of your house. Would you feel differently then? Please stay on top of this, community members. Please stay on top of this one issue. This could cause a lot of problems in neighborhoods that can still considered neighborhoods and then now can be considered parking lots in front of your house. So please, if we decide to go down that route, please speak up, community members that are also concerned about this. And also want to encourage the masks, continuation of wearing our masks. We have to have the safety of others and the health of others also as our own. We are all in this together. The fight is not over against COVID. If we all want to get back to our football games, and we all want our kids to get back to school, and we all want to get back to work, we have to play out this COVID attack with all of us on board. Please wear your masks in the stores. That's all the time you have to do it is when you're around other people. I beg of you to please wear your mask today and you will save a life tomorrow. And lastly, I know we have all been under a lot of stress and we all have a lot of things coming our way. And I want to ask, our law enforcement has had extra duties because we've all been quarantined and we're all getting a little stir crazy. It's worse than winter, and I'm sure it's worse than any seasonal affective disorder we've ever experienced. So, and we all can feel that, healthy or not, in crises or not, we all feel it. But I also want to reach out to law enforcement and say how thankful I am that you go to work every day and you keep our community safe. And I also would like Director to express to them that we are also concerned at their well-being and their care and their mental health. And I would ask him how, we ask about everybody else and how they're doing. How are your officers, your men and women in uniform doing?
I think that these times are probably difficult for everybody, given under the circumstances. Our supervisors as well as my administrative team, along with human resources, we monitor or we stay on top of it and just have small talk and in talks with our officers at roll calls or during their shifts. And it's so far so good. It's very, it's just a very delicate situation that's occurring. And we have many resources at our fingertips in the way of employee assistance programming, which the city has historically provided and made available to all of its employees, and just keeping the communication open and the dialogue going, I think has helped greatly. But I appreciate you asking, and I appreciate your kind words. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you and your officers, men and women, for serving our community and serving it so well. Thank you. And also to the fellow commissioners here, thank you for doing this service as well.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Gillis. Commissioner Toles.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to go back and ask Manager Ridley a couple questions, please. During the street shutdown under the traffic control, you answered one question there. I didn't know if it was 2 weeks, but it's until September 30th. A few business people have called me on that. Also, a couple of them called me and said this is affecting their business and their revenues are going down. I've had occasion, probably 10 or 12 times, to look there between 3 and 5 p.m. and there's only one business open at that time. The street is deserted and the only restaurant open is Midori's. You were talking about a review being done every 2 weeks. What would this review consist of? Who's doing the review? Are you talking business people or?
We are reviewing any feedback that is provided to us from either business owners or the public as far as how they think it's going. And so I would encourage businesses who may be suffering to reach out to us to let us know that, so that as we do that ongoing review, we can take that into consideration.
Okay, and a few of them had a comment that, you know, there's extra picnic tables that are put out next to these businesses. Well, they were thinking, why don't you allow these businesses to take a couple spots on each side, put picnic tables in there, and just reopen the main road up. That's what they ran by me. So maybe that's something that could be looked at. Another question I had for you, what on these street signs, we're going to knock out north, south, and east, west on these street signs. And a few people call me and I says, I don't know what this is about.
As I indicated, we've been doing that since at least 2014. As we've replaced the signs, we have not included those indicators. And the primary purpose for that is so that as a street sign is needed to be replaced, we readily have them on hand at a more efficient and less costly way. And so that's why we've done it that way. And as I indicated, we've been doing that for at least 6 years now, and approximately 50 to 75% of our street signs have been replaced in that way.
I just don't see this, you know, as being a safety factor or having somebody come from out of town and find an address where you don't have 120 South Kinney or 120 North Kinney. Most of these have duplicate addresses. It doesn't make sense, and I think the city's getting their signs from Dombrow's Sign Company out of Charlotte, which I purchased signs from them, which are very reasonable, and I can't see it that we're saving a lot of money to drop off a north, south, east, or west on the signs. It just doesn't make any sense to me. That's my comment on that. I have one other comment. Commissioner Gillis was talking about the building committee and Mr. Olivieri. I don't think it hurt Mr. Olivieri's feelings if you don't extend it out, you get the lots back and try to sell them. The problem is in trying to market it and sell them, who's going to go in that neighborhood and build something that doesn't conform with the new ordinance right now that says you have to have a 20-foot garage setback? Who's going to want an oddball house in the same neighborhood, number one? And number two, we could get this done very quick. You just eliminate the 20-foot setback and we're done. and everybody's back in business. I don't want to argue anymore on the zoning ordinance. You know where my feelings are on that. But that's it.
Manager Ridley?
I was just going to follow up on one of Commissioner Gillis's comments about the rides to the polling locations. I'm not sure if it's the same community member who contacted Commissioner Ronan or not, but he forwarded that on to me, and I responded to the community member to let her know that iRide has historically provided free rides to the polls and plans to do that again this year. And so all it takes is a community member to call iRide to schedule the ride to the poll, and they will get a free ride both to the poll and back. So I responded to the community member who contacted Commissioner Ronan. But if you want to say the same thing to the community member you heard from, we've confirmed that with iRide.
Thank you, Nancy.
I don't see any other hands up for announcements on new business or city-related announcements. We will open up the final public comment on agenda or non-agenda items for our public, and it does not look like we have anyone from the public in our meeting as of now. Manager Ridley, do we have any comments on city-related business emailed to the commission?
Yes, we did receive one written comment, Mayor. It was from Betty Tyler. I don't have an address for Ms. Tyler, but her comment says, I like that you voted to block off Broadway between Main and University. It was a good move for businesses and for those of us who wish to get them on the way to economic recovery. Thank you. So that was from Betty Tyler to you.
Okay. Thank you. I will now close public hearing or public comment section on city-related business, and we have a work session on the 2019 housing study, a continuation from our last meeting, and I think we'll recess for 5 minutes and reconvene at 8:42, and we'll commence that discussion. Okay. It looks like we have the commission back, and we can go into our work session where we left off from last time.
Mayor, could I start off with just a couple comments, if you don't mind?
Yes, please.
On this housing report, I guess I would just like to start out by saying that this housing analysis was requested last year to get a better feel for what our housing availability was and what the perceived need was in the community for housing. And then we were asked to identify potential strategies to address what that housing report showed. And so I guess I would just remind the commission, the purpose of this work session discussion, both last week and tonight, is to talk about those potential ideas, just to get a feel for which ones you do or don't have an appetite for considering, so that we make sure we use the best use of the staff time and the planning commission's time and your time before items come to you. So we're not looking necessarily to get into every specific detail about each of these potential strategies, but just trying to get a feel for whether the strategy has enough interest by the majority of the commission for us to continue to move forward with it and flesh it out. So as I indicated in the packet, I summarized what I thought I heard the general direction was on the 4 things that we talked about last time, of which 2 of them we would be continuing to flesh out and bring back to you, and 2 we would not at this time. And then I tried to provide additional, more specific questions about the other strategies that were outlined as a result of the housing study. So I think that what we're hoping for tonight is to make sure that I captured the general direction we got 2 weeks ago appropriately, and then to continue to get general direction from you on all of the items outlined in letter B of your work session packet for this evening.
Thank you, Nancy. Before we get started, I'm sure everyone has had a chance to review the summary from our last work session, and I see a couple hands up, and I just want to make sure that everyone is in agreement with the summary of our last meeting. Pete, I know your hand went up. Now it's down. George, is that what you want to talk about?
Yeah, could we just go over that summary? Just spend like 4 minutes. I don't want to discuss the summary, but could we just go over the summary verbally? Is that okay, so that we're all on the same page?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to raise issues with it as much as just.
Right. I'd like to either, if we have to discuss it, and then move on, or just move on quickly. But Nancy, do you want to go over those?
Yes, the first item was whether there was any interest in reconsidering our current pilot policy to assist low-income housing, because the current policy we have on the books as of 2001 said that we weren't interested in continuing or weren't interested in any new payment in lieu of taxes. And what we think we heard the commission say 2 weeks ago was that there is not interest in revisiting that policy, that we should leave it on the books as is for now. And some commissioners thought there might be a willingness to look at it at some future time after we see the impact on the market. And some other commissioners felt that the market should just drive it. But regardless of the rationale, the overall sentiment seemed to be not to adjust the policy at this time. Do you want me to go through all 4 of them, Mayor, or just one at a time?
Why don't we just list the 4 ones that we got through, and then
And then the second one was whether there was any interest in looking at converting or selling some of the publicly owned property, particularly in the downtown area, such as our parking lots and town center, because typically someone who's looking for state incentives would like to be in the downtown area. And so we were asking if there was any interest in maybe selling some of that property to potentially interested developers as they came along. And what we heard 2 weeks ago was that there was not interest at that time to keep the public property as public property. The third item was whether there might be any interest in removing some of the prohibitions we have on overnight on-street parking outside of the downtown because of, for a couple reasons. One, what the housing study showed is sometimes that's an impediment to development, but also you've received a couple communications from community members asking that that overnight restriction be lifted because it doesn't seem to be effective for what it was first intended for. And what we heard is that there's at least willingness to consider potential charter or ordinance amendments for that in the future, but we would certainly have to flesh that out and provide you information on how snow removal would occur if we were to do that. And then the fourth one was whether there was any interest in revising the land area per unit requirements for multiple housing that's listed in the zoning ordinance. And again, that would be a way to help with different types of housing, such as duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes. And the general agreement, we heard that there was at least some willingness to consider looking at those land area per unit requirements for potential modifications to allow some of those multi-unit type duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes to occur. So those were the four issues we thought we got general agreement on 2 weeks ago.
Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you very much, particularly for people who are just tuning in and didn't watch us last week. But I really appreciate that succinct summary. I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. I think that was good. Just at least get that out there. So, I'm not seeing any hands up, so I'm going to assume that everyone saw that summary and saw that that reflected our discussion from 2 weeks ago. And so I think we should move straight into our discussion today. And I believe the first item is to provide design assistance for missing middle housing types. And I guess I would either hand it over to Nancy or Jacob to just sort of give us maybe a brief synopsis of what that means. I know in the pack or in the housing report, it sort of alliterates to, models or conceptual designs, and we can sort of decide how much money we want to spend on that. And I guess it'd be helpful to maybe have the experts summarize that better than I did.
Yeah, and I guess first of all, because we had some uncertainty last time about what is meant by missing middle, I want to clarify that in this case, what we're talking about again is anything from a duplex up to a live work type of thing, as is outlined in page 1 of the housing ordinance. So what this strategy would do is it would provide staff assistance to people who are potentially looking at developing that type of housing. We could provide some staff assistance or some contracted assistance to help design what that would look like to fit within the lot that they have available. Jacob, are there more details that go along with that?
Sure, I would just offer that part of the reason why this has been suggested is it's something that staff already does on an unofficial basis quite frequently. And in particular, over the last 10 years with some of the redevelopment projects north of campus, staff has invested a tremendous amount of time and effort to work with property owners and developers to come up with site designs and building designs that met the intent of the redevelopment processes that were in place in that area. This is being recommended for 2 reasons. One, it's a common approach around the country, given that these missing middle housing types in many communities haven't been built in decades. And so there aren't necessarily existing templates available. And so anytime you have to start something from scratch, it adds costs and it adds complexity to the person doing the project. And so this is one model that communities have used to help to encourage the development of these type of housing projects. The second, as I said, is we already do this to a great extent. We just don't advertise that we do it. And so with some endorsement of this as a strategy, we might be able to be more open about offering these services to folks to help get both potentially more projects, but also higher quality projects constructed in our community.
I guess I have a question. I know there was I think it was with Mr. Olivieri. He had some questions about our new zoning ordinance, and there was, I think, Brian Kench and maybe Jacob, you had worked on this as well, sort of a design of a household that had specific requirements that he was indicating that homeowners wanted, and you guys came up with a design that fit our zoning ordinance. And is that the sort of type of work that you're talking about?
Yeah, that's what I was indicating, Mr. Mayor. And really, if you look at virtually any of the redevelopment projects north of campus that occurred, starting around 2009, all of those involved a significant amount of staff design work before they got to the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Commission for approval. So it's something that we, as I said, and it's really, we, to the extent that I might be involved in the meeting, Brian Kench is the person with the design skill that's brought to bear, so I can't take credit for that. But that's really just been a process of both trying to facilitate a smoother review and approval process for the developer, while also getting a quality product as an outcome. And we've had some success with that over the years. And this is, again, just a way to possibly offer that to a broader audience that's not aware that we have those skills in-house. So beyond the handful of developers that we've worked with already, to kind of more formalize that for perhaps homeowners that want to have an accessory dwelling in their backyard, up to someone who might be interested in doing a small scale development project in a neighborhood.
Thanks, Jacob. I guess I think it's sort of alluded to in the housing report, and part of the question that this commission should probably consider is how much staff time and how in resources, given an estimate, what does something like that typically take?
It depends. The starting from scratch is definitely more involved. But that's not typically where we start. We typically start with at least a conceptual idea from the property owner and then work from there to refine it. And Brian's very good in the technology that's available to facilitate this is such that it really makes it a lot easier to do. A lot of amateurs, folks can download programs and do a lot of this work that would have required an architect, 20 years ago. And Brian has a sufficient level of personal skill combined with that technology to be able to, pretty quickly do this type of work. So I wouldn't expect it to be a significant amount of staff time. And certainly if there's a concern about staff time, it could be controlled so that it didn't become overwhelming or take away time from other projects. We just really thought that we were already doing it. If we could offer it a little bit more widely to additional folks, we might see a greater variety of projects come to fruition.
Yeah, I think it's forward thinking, progressive. Commissioner Rowan, I know he's been waiting a long time.
No, I as someone who's not a builder and doesn't understand these things a whole lot, but who has voiced some concerns about maybe a decrease in student rentals and some is this the type of thing where you could transition something that's been traditionally a student rental or something into a duplex? Or I mean, is that I just don't, does it fit into that model of looking at, hey, if we have excess real estate, we can, is that the type of thing that could?
Sure. I mean, to your question, Commissioner Ronan, we've worked with folks who have desired to tear down and rebuild structures. And we've also worked with folks who are just looking to improve an existing structure, whether that's changing the facade or reconfiguring the floor plan to better suit today's marketplace. I think either of those would be within the boundaries of what we were contemplating.
Well, I think that because staff has already been doing this, I think I would be supportive of continuing this and offering those services. Commissioner Elsager?
I was just going to say what you said, Mayor. I agree with that.
Okay. Does anyone else have any, George? George, you're muted.
I was just going to say I agree with it as well. I mean,
Okay. Anyone else? For, against? Commissioner Gillis? Lori, you're muted.
My reservations are that we charge everyone that uses staff time along with consideration everything that we consider or would want investigated or time allocated to do something. The remark is always that staff time, we're trying to save those resources. And so being that we charge most everyone when they're using staff and allocate a hourly charge or a rate, and why we increased a lot of our licenses and things to go along with the amount of staff time, I have reservations about having staff develop or put a lot of time into developing or doing the developer's work or engaging and doing the work that they should be paying someone for, that we're now allowing staff to do for them. I encourage, of course, collaboration so that they can build within our zoning ordinance, but I don't want it to be so excessive that our staff is now working more for developers than they are the city.
Well, I think that's a legitimate concern, and I think it. I think obviously that's something that we can address when we look at our our budget issues, and I think you hit the nail on the head that we do charge for services that are sort of specific in nature and not general to the public, and I'm sure that something like that, staff can come up with a recommendation. And I agree that I think the more we work with our business community to develop, housing and buildings in the way that the community is really sort of set forth, the stronger those relationships will be, and the better we'll be off for it. So, before I guess we move on, Commissioner Tolis, did you have any comments on this?
The only comment that I have on this, I could see it a benefit to residential consumers to let them know, what they can do and what they can't do. But again, most of these people, if they want to do something, now they have to pay an astronomical fee to go to the ZBA or the Planning Commission, which are mostly staff with citizen volunteer and maybe one or two staff members. That's my feeling on that. I'm not, the market's going to drive what it's going to drive and what people are going to build, so that's my comment on that.
Okay. Well, I think what I'm hearing from the commission is a general agreement on providing that service and making that probably more widely known to our building community. So, The next item on the agenda here for our discussion is amendments to the zoning ordinance that would allow missing middle structures in existing residential neighborhoods. And I guess I would see if Nancy or Jacob would like to start that conversation off.
I'm going to defer to Jacob on this one.
Sure. So essentially, we have a very narrow portion of the community where missing middle housing types are actually permitted. They're primarily areas of the community that are almost entirely attached housing types. And by definition, missing middle housing types are typically mixed into and integrated into neighborhoods that include single family housing. And so this is just simply identifying the fact that in our community that is also true. And there may be some places within the community where having a more open approach to where multiple unit attached housing is permitted might increase the supply of that housing in the neighborhoods that people have indicated they want to live in many of our recent public processes. So as an example, this might include the allowance for these type of housing structures within a certain distance of downtown or within a certain distance of the university or Mission Street, areas where there's already some of this housing mixed in, much of it being non-conforming housing types. This could have the side benefit of perhaps making some of those housing types conforming by being more permissive about where they're allowed. Obviously, the challenge with this item, as with any housing related item in Mount Pleasant, is there is a tremendous amount of sensitivity about rental housing in our community, and especially in our single family residential neighborhoods. And there's a tremendous amount of concern about student housing in residential neighborhoods, and that tends to permeate most of these conversations. So this is just simply a suggestion of one item that might facilitate additional missing middle housing types. I have had recent conversations with a local developer who builds missing middle housing in other communities in the area. And that was one of the comments I received from that individual, was that we were extremely limiting in the places where this type of housing was possible to build, and that he'd be interested in building much more of these type of housing units in our community if we did have more areas where it was permitted.
So in this instance, Mayor, if the commission has any willingness to consider this, we could recommend some areas where that might make sense to do that. Jacob mentioned a couple of those areas, but we could more specifically identify those and give more details about what it would mean if the commission has any interest in pursuing that.
I guess my question would be if we come to a general agreement or consensus that we are interested in amending the zoning ordinance to allow those housing types, that would go for the planning commission, and they would probably come to the city commission with probably a more specific proposal, is what I'm guessing.
That would be my recommendation, is that if there's an openness to this, that the planning commission could explore it and bring some recommendations back to the city commission before initiating any type of text or map amendment that would correspond with that change. I do think there's a lot of, this could extend from just allowing it in a couple of additional blocks of the community. Perhaps there's some isolated areas where this would make sense, to a broader change in policy. I don't bring this to you with any preset notion about what the right answer to that would be. I don't think there's probably one right answer, but that would perhaps give the planning commission some time to dive into the details and make an informed recommendation or recommendations to the city commission.
Thank you, Jacob. Commissioner Alsager?
I think I would support us transmitting that openness to encourage the planning commission to investigate this.
Okay. Thanks, Mary. Commissioner Roden?
Yeah, I'm not sure, actually. I think on this one, for me, the devil is definitely in the details, Jacob, and I'd absolutely be against opening this up citywide. I think there are areas of the community where we have lots of student housing, lots of multiple resident housing, and property values have plummeted because of that. So I mean, I think while I'm cautiously optimistic, I think coming up with at least as long as I'm on the commission, coming up with a general policy isn't something that I would support. So if there's specific pockets in the community where this might be viable, I'm again concerned with having a surplus amount of student housing, a surplus amount of apartments here. So for me, if you could come up with something that is going to take this surplus and make it more marketable, make it more desirable for people, then I'd be interested in that. But CMU is not increasing, and we've had these conversations. I'm not going to go back over it again, but I'd like something a little more creative. But that's just me.
Commissioner Gillis?
Yes, I'm not interested in this. I think there's enough housing units and apartment buildings and vacant availabilities in all different categories, be it single family home, duplexes, and things where we could accommodate the supposed need. So I'm not interested in this. Thank you.
I think when I think about whether or not I'm supportive, I think like Commissioner Ronan, the devil is going to be in the details. There are a lot of things to consider when you look at all the different missing middle housing types. But I'm open to the idea of the Planning Commission looking into this with some close eyes and really spending a lot of time and looking at what a recommendation they might have. One of the things that I think the city has been criticized for, and probably cities and beyond us, is limiting the ability of developers and homeowners to shape how they want to build, and I think this allows a lot more freedom if we potentially go down that route. And so I'm not gonna say here, yeah, that missing middle fits every neighborhood and zoning that we have in the city. I definitely agree with that, but I think I'm open to seeing a recommendation, and if the Planning Commission comes back with a recommendation, it's on the City Commission's responsibility and ability to tweak that recommendation the way they see fit. And so I'm all ears to any recommendation and would be supportive of that. Commissioner Tolis.
I'm not interested in opposed to this. Just no interest whatsoever.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher?
I am interested in sending it to the zoning board so that they can do the heavy lifting and figure out, where it might go. I mean, it may be that they don't have any ideas, and they say, well, this doesn't seem to fit anywhere, and then that's fine. But I think that there's nothing wrong with looking into it, as far as I'm concerned.
Vice Mayor Perschbacher, you said the zoning board. Did you intend the Planning Commission? Is that what you meant?
Commission.
Okay.
Sorry. Long time ago in the 80s, I was on a board, and it was the Planning and Zoning Board. So I always put them together.
I understand. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't going in a different route.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm hearing, obviously absent Kristen being here, we seem to be a little bit divided on where we want to possibly end up. But it seems to me that there at least is some interest, and I think the community and our housing market analysis and different things have sort of poked at this to say, hey, we really want to look at this issue and address it One thing I hear from a lot of people who work at CMU is that it's difficult to find the housing that they're looking for in Mount Pleasant amongst our, more professional working people. And I think it's worth looking into, and I think the commission here is sort of saying the same thing. So we can move on to our next topic here. And this is the incentive owner-occupied conversion programs. There was obviously some information in the packet about the previous program and sort of the thoughts that sort of led to its ending back in, I believe it was 2015 or 18?
2016, Mr. Mayor.
16, okay. I guess I would leave it to maybe Nancy or Jacob as well to sort of give us maybe a little background and some comments just to give us an overview.
In 2015, Mayor, really two things happened. One was there was a problem with one of the incentives that was given. And so it caused us to look at the policy. And so when it came to the commission in 2016, we gave two options. One was to fill the hole that was identified in the policy to make sure that that problem did not occur again. But at the same time, we had also done an analysis of the incentive program, and the Planning Commission had looked at it, and there was some concerns about whether the program had really accomplished its intended goal and whether it was working whether it was accomplishing what we wanted it to. And there seemed to be some uncertainty that it was having the intended impact. And with the amount of money we were spending, there was a question about whether that continued to be the best use of funds or not. So the decision that was made in 2016 was to suspend the program. So we haven't done anything with it since that time. So we have $28,000 that is still sitting in a designated fund that could be used for some kind of owner-occupied incentive program. But in addition to that, we have other housing funds that are available that could be allocated to a housing incentive program. But before doing that, we would want to make sure we had a program that we knew what we were trying to accomplish, what the goals were, and we had it structured in a way that we thought might be more likely to accomplish those goals. So I guess we presented it as a two-pronged question is, are you interested in a similar program, or are there thoughts on a different program that maybe is more laser focused on what we're trying to accomplish? And we're looking for your input on that before we start designing a new program. Jacob, anything additional on
that? Commissioner Toles, you have your hand up?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Commissioner Ronan?
Yeah, again, I'd like to suggest that what was going on in 2002 when the city started this program, or what was going on even in 2015 in our community, is much different than today. I don't know how else to keep saying the same thing. So, I mean, I'd be very much in favor of something like this right now. But I'd be in favor of it if it's tied in with what we just talked about in the last work session and this work session. So I'm less in favor of having a piecemeal approach and just saying we're going to have these things, as opposed to sort of putting together a package with several of these things available, so that we have sort of a comprehensive understanding of how we're evolving. But I think my sense is the number of people renting spaces in the city is going to be significantly reduced. So I think, if you said in 2014, for example, do you want a owner-occupied thing, or do you want to rent to students? There were tons of, a lot of people will rent. I just think the context, we just need to be sensitive to the context. So I'd be in favor of something like this, if it's embedded within a larger.
And I think your point about, you know, addressing our housing issues, but not just with, you know, certain things that don't necessarily work together. I think that's something we have to be cognizant of. And Commissioner Tolis, see your hand up.
I have to agree with Commissioner Roan, and I just think we have to figure out before we go on with this what we're trying to accomplish and what's the end run, you know, doing this. What are we trying to do? Commissioner Ronan says times have changed here, you know. And I think we have to know what we're trying to accomplish. It's very simple. We'll proceed with something like that.
I think that brings up a good point. When you look at the Planning Commission meeting minutes and some of the survey questionnaires that were put out, you know, I think there was a feeling that that program that we used to have was maybe a little too broad. And you look at the numbers of rental licenses that were, you know, pulled off the market versus put back into the market, it sort of didn't have a big effect. Though I think the number of houses that were converted, I thought that was a reasonable number, given probably the amount of marketing and the amount of time that the program was given. And there seemed to be a desire for making it more specific to maybe non-conforming uses or more specific to a specific region in one of our neighborhoods. And I think those things are really helpful to mention if you have ideas on that. But I'll let Commissioner Gillis have the floor here.
Thank you. I think the effectiveness of the program was kind of thwarted at the beginning because there was such a small area that was used for the city around downtown. Well, you saw the map in our packet up to the northeast of downtown, or the north of downtown, the south of downtown, very limited in the areas that this could be used. Also, unfortunately, certain people took advantage of this incentive program, which made it come to a halt. People were getting the money and then after a couple years putting tenants in there and renting it again until someone actually let the cat out of the bag and reported it. There was another local realtor that decided to use the incentive program to sell her family home to her daughter by turning it into a 6-month rental. Got it all prettied up, got a rental license, waited 6 months, sold it to her daughter. Her daughter got $10,000 of taxpayer money. Thus, you see in our packet, those two highlighted pieces in our packet, that's exactly where those came from. Property must have a licensed rental for at least 2 years prior to purchase, and purchase and sale cannot be between two individuals with an immediate family, within an immediate family. Both of those clarifications were because of this realtor taking advantage of this program. So I do believe in the program. I've always believed in the program. I do want the area to be expanded to include the west side because there's a major amount of rentals on the west side. We've lost home owners and our neighborhood. I think it would rehabilitate neighborhoods with returning single-family homes to home ownership. And I also believe that it will help our community members when they can own something to anchor them to our Mount Pleasant town, and also to give them pride that they are working to achieving something. As we all know, as we work, you work to buy things, and then when you can see what you've accomplished, that's some of the payoff of your work. But I really do think this should be continued in some shape or form to eliminate the loopholes that community members will take to get free money and return it back to what it was intended was to take rental properties and convert them into single family homes, and of course allow people to have equity where they live. And so I hope we could come up with something that could tackle that, and I hope we could put extra dollars in there rather than just having the 28,000 that's sitting there. But that was the reason why we suspended this program. We had a lot of other things on our plate, excuse me, including the zoning ordinance. And so rather than trying to tackle the issue and figure out all the loopholes of how somebody's going to want to get free money to pay for their family home, we suspended that. So I'm glad the conversation has started up again. It can be a really a real winner about changing some of our neighborhoods back into that neighborhood feel. So I would be interested in that. Thank you.
Commissioner Alsager?
I appreciate Commissioner Gillis's words and her prior knowledge about that, and I agree that it would be something we could pursue.
I guess I'm just waiting for either Amy or Pete to give, I guess, maybe clear direct. I guess, Pete, did you say you were in favor?
I'm in favor of doing that, Mayor, but I want to see what we're trying to accomplish, number one, and number two, what's the end game before we proceed with it, you know.
Sure. Yeah, I think, like a lot of these things, probably the devil is in the details, and we'll come back to the commission for further vetting. Vice Mayor Kirschbacher?
I agree. I think that this is this program was successful in many aspects. Obviously, we learned a lot from it, and we take what we've learned and we modify it and we make it work.
Okay. Well, it seems like I'm hearing from the commission that we'd like to move ahead on that item. And then the last item really for the work session here is the neighborhood enterprise zone. And I'm sure commissioners here will recall that we did create a neighborhood enterprise zone, I believe, for 410 West Broadway. And there was obviously some details in the packet about where they can be located and what sort of benefits can be attained. Nancy or Jacob, you want to start us off again?
I think with this one, Mayor, I would say you mentioned 410 West Broadway. That was one eligible property because that was new housing. I think the reason we put this in the packet, though, is it can be a tool that's used for rehabilitation of existing housing. I think is why we were more interested in continuing to have the discussion on it, because it can be used to rehab your existing housing stock. And one of the other things that it is often used for is another incentive to convert something to an owner-occupied housing. And knowing that had some interest by the City Commission, we think this is a tool that could be used in those areas. And again, we would have to look at where it would apply and the details of what it is we're trying to accomplish, just like you've said on all of the other ones. But it could be a tool to help accomplish those, another tool to help accomplish those goals for rehab or conversions.
I guess I have one question. In the packet, it talks about where a neighborhood enterprise zone can be, and it talks about like a downtown district, like I guess the DDA or the principal shopping district. And are we geographically isolated to those specific districts that we already have in the city, or is this?
No, we can create our own zone anywhere in the city. It's got to be an identified area, but we can create a zone that is outside of downtown or outside the DDA. Is that correct, Jacob?
Thank you for that clarification. I know when I was reading it, I thought a lot about our downtown. And I know in our downtown, we have a lot of, we've got a lot of retail and restaurants on the bottom floor, but there are some apartments on the second and I think maybe third floor, mostly second floor though, in our downtown. But there's a lot of places where, I've heard people talk about what the cost of renovating those spaces are and how it becomes really cost prohibitive. And so I thought that, even if it was only isolated in those areas, it's worth looking into because, we've been talking for years about, having more a vibrant downtown and having people living downtown. And if business owners and landowners can redevelop those properties that are already there, one, it's a better bang for our buck, I think, in terms of expending infrastructure and using of resources, but it also will help in the long term our business community. So, Commissioner Rowan, I see your hand up.
Again, more of a question than do these properties have to be Oprah qualified? I mean, do they all have to be obsolete? I mean, how does that? I read through it, and to be honest, I'm not sure I understand it as much as I need to. Do they all need to qualify under the Oprah Act?
I think there's different eligibility criteria depending on the zone that it's in or the identified area and what you're trying to accomplish. So I think the short answer is no, they don't all have to be obsolete. But in certain areas, under certain circumstances, they may have to be, but it's not an all or nothing type thing for the program.
If I could continue that, thank you very much. That was a great explanation. It sounds like it sounds like a winner to me. I mean, I don't.
Commissioner Gillis?
I am not interested in the neighborhood enterprise zone. I can foresee certain buildings downtown that are already going to be on that gravy train of not paying taxes. One's on University and Broadway, what I call the Darth Vader building. It's where Jim McBride is on the main floor. Several floors, I think there's 3 floors of that needs rehabilitation. Isabella Bank owns that building. If I recall correctly, there's already been an Oprah just for that corner, so they can get taxpayer money to then refurbish that building and the square footage in it. I have a problem with taxpayer money always bailing out people's or property owners that have changed their property and now that don't like it, want to revert back to the historical facade on the outside. They didn't do the maintenance that they could have while they owned it. Now it becomes dilapidated and uninhabitable. They want second, third floor office space, second, third floor residential units. They want taxpayers to pay for that. And they do that by making Oprahs. They do that by neighborhood enterprise zones. And what does that mean for taxpayers? They don't have to pay their taxes, but you do. So I have a real problem with giving tax abatements or eliminating taxes when we are continuously telling the community that we're buying this property, or we took the state home property, the regional center, to increase our tax base. And we say that out of one side of our mouth as we turn around and we constantly give tax breaks to other people. And so we are not responsible to refurbish every rundown building in Mount Pleasant. We're also not responsible to give tax breaks to people to come in and build new so they can make more of a profit while our other businesses are and property owners are struggling. So I would not be interested in this just for the fact that I fear that it will be abused, as I've seen it happen before. So that's my input. Thank you.
Mayor, could I ask Commissioner Gillis a question? Commissioner Gillis, if it was structured in a way where it was more geared at single family homes and had the owner occupied piece of it, would you be interested in it in that limited scope if that was a possibility? I'm just curious.
Yes. Thank you for asking. For single family homes.
Yeah, I was just curious if that would change. Okay.
Thank you.
Mary?
I think I'm going down the same road that Lori is, that's the end goal here, or one of the end goals is to have home ownership more available. So I would be in favor of this.
Vice Mayor Bushbacher?
I think that's the name of the entire work session is housing. So I think that's what we're trying to do, is trying to figure out how to enhance the housing in the area, how to boost homeowner occupied and all of that. So I would agree with this, with it being mainly for homeowners, but I'm not opposed to it being in other locations.
Well, Pete, did you have any comments before we move on?
No, I have to agree with Commissioner Gillis. Most of what she spoke on. I think there's, like she mentioned, the OLI B&T building. You have the Cross building there, which, in my opinion, you can't rehab and convert that. That's going to have to be torn down and something else has to be put there. I don't have a problem with rehabbing some of the stuff for owner occupation, you know, persons to move into that. But this commercial buildings, I don't know what we're going to do with that. I really don't.
Good. Well, I guess what I'm hearing from the commission is that we're open to pursuing the neighborhood enterprise zone, and staff can obviously the details will be reviewed later. I feel like I've said that a few times. Nancy and Jacob, is there anything else that you need from the commission tonight?
No, sir.
I don't think so. I think that gives us some good direction of which ones to move forward on. And obviously we have some work to do before something comes back to you, but it gives us some direction on where to focus those efforts. So I appreciate your input.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you to staff, thank you to the commission. And I think at 9:37, I will adjourn this meeting. Everybody have a good night. Hey, Pete.
Take care.
You.